Summer 2013. Austria is once again trying to catch some thunder with the relaunch of the infamous animal rights activists case. This time it seems to be even more dramatic. The case is backed by a higher regional court verdict that defines essential NGO work as criminal coercion. After 5 long years of standing up to the state attempting to crush legal campaigning work, the activists tasted the bittersweet victory of a full acquittal in the trial that made history for being the longest in Austria's Second Republic. Bittersweet because, not satisfied with a full acquittal, the state has announced that it will appeal this verdict and put several of the original defendants back on trial, this time charging them with a different crime: coercion. Here's a short recap of what happened so far. In the early hours of the 21st of May 2008, Austrian police raided 23 addresses, a mixture of animal rights activists' homes and NGO offices. 10 people were arrested and put onto remand custody for up to 105 days without being informed of the charges against them. Vast amounts of materials were seized, including almost the entire infrastructure of the NGO VGT. The BAT faced similar arbitrary measures. Shortly after the arrests, Amnesty International issued a statement expressing deep concern over the disproportionate measures used and the violations of the activists' civil rights. Even today, years later, the defendants have never had full access to the prosecution files, something which every defendant has a right to. At the remand hearing, the judge saw fit to extend their remand despite the existence of exonerating evidence and, without a shred of incriminating evidence, to link the activists to any of the many crimes they were charged with. Indeed, it was later exposed that in an attempt to justify the remand sentence and bring the case to trial, police had fabricated evidence. One example being their confusing soya milk with plastic explosives. Only slowly was the full scope and horror of the Kleiderbauer task force unravelled. The task force had been monitoring an alarming number of people in the Austrian animal rights movement for years, with the use of special agents from the homicide division, phone tapping operations, undercover agents, surveillance cameras and tracking devices. The total cost of the investigation and the court case is estimated to be around €6 million. Despite this massive operation and time investment, the 35-man-strong Kleiderbauer task force was unable to produce any evidence to start a case other than a 1 DNA strain on a rock that was allegedly used to smash a window. The house searches and imprisonments caused global protest and even hunger strikes, but the state prosecutor's office showed little respect for criminal procedure and chose to ignore exonerating evidence. After an exhausting court case that stretched over a year and 100 days of hearings, in which the defendants were forced to prove themselves innocent, the sentence was one of full acquittal. Due to the extraordinary length of the trial, many of the defendants lost their jobs. Legal costs incurred by each of the defendants range between €400,000 and €900,000, but the state only refunds costs of up to €1,250. By having to prove their innocence, the state has damaged many careers and forced all the activists into lifelong financial ruin. In 2011, Gerald Igor Hausenberger released a documentary film about the trial called Der Prozess, The Trial. It won awards for Best Documentary at various film festivals around the world and provides an overview of some of the blatant injustices surrounding the trial. It was always feared that the prosecution would appeal against the not guilty verdict, After all, the public were disgusted at seeing such a huge amount of taxpayers' money sunk into a case with no evidence to base it on. Recently, those fears have been confirmed, and the Higher Regional Court of Vienna has fully confirmed the prosecutor's appeal against the acquittal. The prosecution built their case in the first trial around defining the animal rights movement as having the same structure and purpose as a criminal organisation. That having failed, they will now focus in the next trial on painting classical NGO campaigns as coercion. Prosecution will claim that campaigning for a company to change their business practice is immoral and indecent. In Austria, this amounts to a charge of coercion. The sentence for coercion is up to 5 years in prison. One of the defendants, Sabine Koch, member of BAT, Base Group Animal Rights, is faced with charges of criminal coercion for exercising her right to speak at a shareholders' meeting of the company Escada. Being shareholder herself, she talked about the horrors associated with producing fur and put forward the suggestion of opting out of the trade. She also announced a legal campaign in the event that the company decided to continue selling fur. Similarly, Felix Natt, chairman of the VGO, Vegan Society Austria, is faced with criminal charges of coercion for writing 6 emails on behalf of the VGT, Association Against Animal Factories, to the company Fernkrantz, asking for an end to their participation in the fur trade and announcing a legal awareness-raising campaign against them should they fail to do so. Here is some footage of the international protests against the first wave of repression against the Austrian animal rights activists from 2008 to 2010.
On the 26th of May, protesters descended on the Austrian embassy in Washington, D.C., demanding an end to legal persecution of animal rights activists in that country.
Once again, Austria, the reason we are outside of your embassy on the afternoon of May 26th is because we are taking part in a global campaign called Shame on Austria.
Against government repression in Austria. Worldwide protests are taking place in response to the severe mistreatment and unjust charges against animal advocates by the Austrian government, despite lacking evidence of criminal activity. Last year, the homes and offices of 10 leading Austrian animal advocates were raided, and these individuals were kept in solitary confinement for several months. This was part of a 2-year investigation which has resulted in 26 homes and 7 NGO office searches, informants, wiretaps, email surveillance, and other personal and vehicle tracking. All of the time, money, and resources dedicated to this has yielded no direct evidence of any criminal activity.
What do we want?
End activist repression!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
End activist...
אוקיי, יש לנו כאן שני חברים שגם עולים על המשטח עם איזושהי מחאה, עם הדגל הזה.
למה לא מראים לנו מה הם אומרים שם? מה קורה שם? אושיסקי! לא, מה זה?
אוסטריה תתביישי.
Stop
Tierrechtler Rennen wegen Bildung einer kriminellen Organisation. 2010 soll der Prozess gegen insgesamt 10 österreichische Tierrechtlerinnen der Basisgruppe Tierrechte BAT, anderem Tierrecht sowie Tierschutzgruppen beginnen.
This is a call for global action. If you think this injustice should not be tolerated, join us and do something about it. Write to the Austrian Embassy, to politicians in Austria, to the Ministry of Justice, to the Higher Regional Court. Make banners, print flyers, shout, scream, protest. We need legal experts to translate documents like the Higher Regional Court verdict into other languages. We need scholars and public figures to voice their opinion, and everyone who cares about freedom of speech and civil liberties to make their voice heard. Every little bit helps. Thanks to all the activists in this video, and thank you for watching.